Well, if you watched last week's episode of Respect Your Game, we gave songs to describe the WNBA. And my song was Out of Control. And that is exactly what we saw in the Indiana Fever versus the Connecticut Sun game. So here's Caitlin Clark talking after this crazy game.
Game too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys came for basketball.
Yeah,
Let's talk about basketball. Yeah. Come on now.
What do you think of just how you all were able to pull away in the second half, Caitlin, in particular?
We're going to the Commissioner Cup Championship.
Let's go!
Pretty exciting. Y'all want to talk about that? Let's talk about that.
What do you think, again, in the second half allowed you all to create some distance there, and what can you build on going into that cup final?
I thought we were physical on defense. I think that's where we lacked in the first half. I think the first half we had moments where we were up 10, we're up 8, we're up 12, and we continue to just let them back in the game. And I think, prior to maybe the second half where we finally got our foot on the gas, that's kind of where we have struggled all season long is we continue to get these leads, these 8-point leads, these 6-point leads, these 10-point leads, and we just let teams back in the game and with bad shots, turnovers, whatever it is. So I think it's just, we kind of got over the hump there, and then we're able to grow our lead in the fourth quarter. They even cut it to 10 in the fourth quarter, and I thought we really responded well and were able to open it up for a pretty comfortable win.
Yeah, it was a pretty comfortable win, but that was definitely not the show. It was the absolute brawl that occurred in the third quarter. And then with a few seconds left with Cunningham. Crazy, Kasey.
I was shocked. First of all, you texted me showing me like a glimmer of what the show was within the show, and the amount of times that I watched that, because I was like, what the heck what just happened here? Why is this going on? And you can tell that Caitlin Clark is still pretty fired up after all of the emotions that probably ran through that game. But yeah, why it went to that, couldn't fully elaborate on, but the fact that they're revving things up, they're showing that they're equally as aggressive and just like all the way in is something to keep an eye out on.
It was pretty heated. And I think a lot of people had said, this was like a buildup, right? This wasn't just like one word that was exchanged or, something that had happened in game. Like, yes, it was JC Sheldon in the third quarter who poked Caitlin in the eye. Caitlin gives a little shove back, probably because Sheldon got up in her face, too. Like, there was a little bit of that I don't think people fully saw. Then Marina Mabry comes out of nowhere and, like, shoulder drops Caitlin Clark to the floor. I mean, this was not something that you typically see in women's basketball, just like, boom, smack the ground, boom, smack the ground. I mean, it was crazy, but I think the part that really set it off, and like, yes, it was going to be a headline regardless.
Oh, yeah.
Was at the end of the game, there's a few seconds left, and Cunningham, she's having her teammates back, and she just puts Sheldon in an absolute headlock. I mean, it was absolutely wild, and just to see that, but like, that's what happens when these games get out of control, and these players are talking about like, hey, like this was gonna happen at some point. You've seen other brawls not at all to this impactfulness like earlier in the season, but I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. But let's get to what head coach of the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, had to say after the game.
I'll take the official questions. There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs. It's exactly what you expect, right, out of fierce competition. So I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. So they got to get control of it. They got to be better. They got to be better.
The fact that she was talking to them in the first quarter just shows you that, like, this is not just players getting heated. Like, this was an uncontrollable situation that the refs have to, like, if you're not calling fouls early in the game, players take that as their game plan. They're like, okay, perfect. They're not going to call fouls this way. I can get away with X, Y, and Z. It's like part of your game plan as a player. I've been in huddles where we talk about it. Even on the other side, hey, they're calling the tic-tac fouls. Like, we have to back off. It becomes part of how you play the game. So, yeah, Stephanie White is really coming at the refs for a good reason.
Well, for a great reason. And the other thing that she pointed out, too, is the fact that this isn't the first of this, especially this season. Remember right here on Respect Her Game, I believe it's when they played Chicago. Anyway, we saw hurt AB. We saw Boston come to the defense of Caitlin Clark in that game. So we've seen a
who's
number.
Going to protect Caitlin?
That's what the game's becoming. Who's going to protect Caitlin Clark versus this team? Who's going to protect Caitlin Clark versus this team? And I'm not doing that to victimize Caitlin Clark. I'm just saying, like, I can understand why they're worked up, because it just seems like there's always something. So there has to be a teammate that's going to come in and help out. And I feel like you can see the frustration and you can hear the frustration from Caitlin Clark, as in the grand scheme of everything and most of the matchups they've had over the last month, of it just feels like they constantly are being put in this position.
Yeah, and like, you want to defend your teammate regardless.
Right.
And then you go into these games knowing that every single team, like, Caitlin is the target. She has a target on their back. Have you seen that State Farm commercial where she's like, it's easier to shoot from the target?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, Caitlin, like, you're literally standing on the target. And for people who don't know, it's a great commercial. You'll see it eventually. But literally, YouTube it. Literally, she has a target on her back.
Yeah.
Physically. Like, people aren't just figuring out, okay, what's the best way to defend her? How far am I going to pressure out? We know she can shoot the deep three. Like, they're going at her.
They're doing extra stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
aggressively. And so I think, like, you have to give her own teammates a little bit of grace, in the sense of, like, yeah, if you see, like, your sister out there on the court getting beat up in ways like getting poked in the eye and then someone coming in her face, like, you're going to step in and do something about it, especially when she's dropped to the ground. Like, I would hope, if I was the head coach, I'd hope my teammates were stepping up for my players in that way.
100%.
Probably not in the headlock way, okay? Like,
I don't know about the headlock, but honestly, if it was my personal teammate, AB, genuinely, like, if you and I were on a team and I knew that, like, gosh, here we go again, like, just these extra, like, flagrant things, the poking at, like, why are we poking each other in the eye, or spearing in the chest, and just all these extra things, like, I protectively would feel like, okay, I'm over this. Like, every game we go into, this is a factor. So I think that ramped up the emotional aspect of it as well. And I mean, Cunningham's been in the headlines so much also, so we don't know what the conversational basis was on top of protecting Caitlin Clark, on top of.
Right. Well, let's hear from Sophie Cunningham. When we come back in a short break, we'll get all her perspective on the headlock situation. All right, well, let's hear from Sophie Cunningham after the game and having a few days to kind of take it all in, and obviously her newfound fame as well. So let's hear from Cunningham.
I'm not focused on the extracurricular activities, and you know what? During that, it was just part of the game. I think the refs had a lot to do with that. It was a build-up for a couple of years now of them just not protecting, the star player of the WNBA. And so, at the end of the day, I'm going to protect my teammates. That's what I do, and I'm a team player, so it's all good.
Yes, she is a team player for sure, and it's been crazy just to see how the world has really reacted to Cunningham and what she did and to back up Caitlin Clark. Yes, it was a flagrant foul, very flagrant, in fact. Not something that you want people doing at all. But at the same time, I think the motive behind it was like, hey, like, you're going to drop my girl, I'm going to drop you.
Right. That's exactly what she was doing. I mean, she full on took on an enforcer role at that moment. And like I mentioned before the break, you're seeing Cunningham kind of get in the headlines a bit more, and it's going to not just revolve around the headlock, but now it's going to make people inquisitive about, what her role is on this team, how and why she was so protective, what she brings to the table outside of that. I mean, look right here. Sophie's jerseys selling out.
Crazy.
Right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's like insane too. And even on Instagram, I think she had an increase of 300,000 followers. She now has 1.2 million followers on TikTok. I mean, people clearly like responded to this and were like, hey, like, we're going to support someone who's like protecting Caitlin. Like, clearly, like, you can say what you want to say about the WNBA, but clearly, like, the fan bases can appreciate her game and really have a dislike towards people who are coming at her with like bad defense. Like, let's just say what it is. That's bad defense. When you're slapping your hand in someone's face, you're going to end up poking someone in the eye. Like, that's bad defense. It's the same way if like you jump over someone, you roll onto someone, if you don't break down your feet, like, bad defense. Sometimes like there's a level of like aggression that crosses the line of like really athletic competitors.
Yes.
But like when you're let your emotions get into it, and right, like these are players who have competed against each other for years and years and years. Like clearly that's going to get in the way.
You put that in such a great way, AB, because the reality of it is when you have to start doing antics, what are you doing? You're trying to cover up the fact that your skill set is not going toe to toe with your opponent. So that was something that my soccer coach used to tell us. Like when you start doing animated behavior and over the top fouling and having all these mistakes and penalties and just bad situations, you're really telling your opponent, we can't match your compete. So now we're going to do this stuff. And it's not a good look. So I think that probably also gassed up Cunningham to be like, hey, I'm going to just take this part of the game in my own hands, because it was at the end. So it's not like she did it during. It was like
seconds left. She was like, she knew she was thinking about it.
She timed it. I think she had that. I think she knew. She was like, I'm going to have my moment to support my girl, to be an enforcer, but seconds left. Like, could you imagine if she did that earlier in the game?
No, that would have been absolutely wild. I mean, I don't even know how you go on with the rest of the game. It's kind of like what happened in the NBA finals. Like when someone goes down, you kind of have this like reserve, like, okay, how do I handle the next steps? Like kind of the similar way, like what's going to be too much? I don't want to be the person to start the fight, but I also don't want to like look like a wimp, right? Too. But this whole situation kind of reminded me back to one of my lacrosse games. I remember getting cross-checked from behind, and I fell face down. I couldn't see anything, and I just heard the girl who hit me say, "She hit me," and I'm thinking, I'm about to get up and be like, "You're the one who dropped me to the ground." And what had happened was my teammate came from like the opposite box,
flying
and hit her. Like,
oh my gosh,
she had cross-checked her because she came after me. So I think like that teammate relationship, when you see your teammate go physically to the ground, and you have a relationship outside of the court, you know, outside of the field, wherever you are, like that can transcend a lot, and you never know what someone's gonna do for you. But this whole situation reminded me of the "she hit me," and I'm thinking, no way she's talking that.
I would have lost it.
And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna shut my mouth because my girl is hitting her.
Exactly. But no, so funny, because maybe I'm jumping off the page a little too much here, but if you think about it, as quick pace as things go, and we saw Stephanie White talk about the fact she already had to engage and speak with the refs on this, maybe sometimes your teammates stepping in to defend you kind of like adds to supporting the story of like who actually started what's going on. You know what I mean? I think it might help like a little bit, because like thinking to your situation, like if your teammate comes flying from the other side of the field, like the reality of it is like, I didn't just come flying off the hinges for no reason. And while she's screaming that you hit her, and you don't have the time to replay everything back, or some leagues don't have the instant replay to the level of others, it could be an extra layer of support that's needed for the storyline of it all.
Definitely. And I think that's why people reacted the way they were in so support of Cunningham, because they were like, okay, that's how you have your teammates back.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side, Mabry came in and like dropped her shoulder on Clark. Clark kind of like shoved her off because she was Sheldon off because she had like got poked in the eye, and she's like, "You're getting in my face, like kind of get off me," kind of thing. It's like, who's in the right? You know, when you want to come at each other, it's like, who's in the right? How far can you go with that stuff? But like you said, it is going to propel this Indiana Fever team, I think, to be closer as a team, to know like how much do they really have each other's back in the Commissioner Cup, which Caitlin Clark was very excited. You could see the power that she had behind her voice. She's excited that they're in this championship game against the Minnesota Lynx, but I think I'm going to go with the Indiana Fever. I know they're the underdogs in this. There's a lot of money on the line. It's like $500,000 for this championship. So I'm going to go with the Indiana Fever, just because I think that the spirit that the Indiana Fever have right now, coming off of what is a heated game, and yes, there have been some struggles that they've had this season, but I love the leadership from Stephanie White. I love how she's taking the mic away from Caitlin, being like, okay, you're not going to deal with that. I'm going to deal with these questions. And I think this team is on a really great track, even if it hasn't been as stellar as a performance as the Lynx throughout the season. But Kasey, if you had to pick one team, Lynx, Fever, who are you going to go with?
Yeah, y'all know I typically try to support Minnesota and keep that going, but I completely agree with you. I think that this team is just too synergistic in a number of ways, and it's not just level of play. It's the sisterhood, it's the camaraderie, it's the family that they are becoming. I feel like they came into this season knowing that the potential was talked about so much last year, and they got closer to kind of proving themselves. This year, they have all the momentum behind them, and we're seeing the numbers from Caitlin Clark and like what she did upon her return after injury. There's just so many great facets to like what this team is doing and accomplishing as a unit, and then expanding upon as a team, and then in their compete. So I'm not going against the Fever right now. I think that that'd be a little too crazy.
I think the PR team for the Indiana Fever need to send me and Kasey some Fever swag. We would love to put on that yellow. Please send it.
We are also good luck.
We're also good luck. Yeah, clearly, if you're keeping up with respect to your game.